the theme for sort of the first part of the show here is going to be really Microsoft and Activision Blizzard. There's been a few stories this week about Activision and Microsoft, Activision Blizzard and Microsoft. And so let's kick it off with everyone's favorite new game, Diablo Immortal, in the news this week. And the headline here, Diablo Immortal's mobile version crosses 100 million in revenue. So the subheadline says, Activision Blizzard's highly anticipated action role-playing game earned over 100 million on the App Store and Google Play. So according to Sensor Tower's data, they say the Diablo Immortal has generated 100 million in revenue in 8 weeks. That's 50 million per month. It got 20 million downloads during that 2-month period, and it was the most downloaded mobile game for June 2022. It made it to the list of most downloaded mobile games, ranking 10th worldwide, and that was without China. So it went live in China on July 25th. So all this revenue really doesn't include China. It's just June and July, basically. So it's the number 13 revenue-generating mobile game in the world, but they're saying with China now online, that could go up significantly. So what do we make now that there's some numbers around Diablo Immortal? All of the complaints aside, if you're an executive at Activision Blizzard, is this anything like, can you call this anything other than a success?
Well, we don't have all the data, so we don't know how much it obviously cost them to build and all that, but it's only been a few months. So I would say pretty confidently, yeah, they're probably looking at this and saying, our strategy has been right. I mean, they a few years back made the decision they were going to bring most, if not all, of their franchises to mobile. And I think at the time it was, I don't want to say ridiculed because that's not probably accurate, but people doubted that it would be possible. And obviously they had a massive, massive success with Call of Duty Mobile. That's been a home run for them. And now with Diablo, people, when the announcement happened, they faced a lot of backlash from fans. If you remember at BlizzCon, I think, BlizzCon 2019, that was the famous, you guys have phones comment that was made. But yet it's been successful. So I think they're probably patting themselves on the back and say, oh, look how smart we were to lead to mobile. So I'll give them credit for that. I think in this case, we'll put a little bit of an asterisk for two reasons. One, we have to see how the game maintains. I kind of feel like every time a game launches and we want to immediately crown it, that's always my takeaway is, hey guys, let's pump the brakes. Let's see 6 months, 9 months from now, whether it's sustaining or whether people kind of pull away. And then number two, and I think this is a bit unique in this situation, is we'll have to see what this does for demand for Diablo 4, right? Which I think is coming next year or the year after. Does this actually lead to a bigger player base because maybe they got new players through the mobile game that hadn't been exposed to Diablo before? Or does it cannibalize some of that demand because people are saying, well, there's a free version that I like and I don't necessarily need to buy the box copy? Or did they piss off their most loyal core fans because they were the ones that actually were mad about it being on the phone? So it's a little bit of a TBD, but I think I'm sure they're very happy with themselves.
Kind of like a follow-up to that, just because I think that Activision has proven time and time again now to really be committed to the mobile strategy and have success with it. As Jeff said, there's always the caveat that you never know how long the success is going to last, but 100 million in the first couple of months is definitely a success. I'm wondering now how they're thinking about competition with other AAA publishers, just because Riot, EA haven't moved into this mobile space as much. And Activision's not only done it with King and with Candy Crush and kind of the typical mobile games, but also with their kind of blue chip franchises and moving that onto mobile. So I'm wondering just if they're kind of thinking about different competitors other than just AAA publishers, if they're looking at other mobile companies, not necessarily the Zyngas, but the really big mobile development companies as the ones that are more their competitors now than Riot and EA have been. And I'm wondering if they're reframing who the competition is in the space, because they've been the first movers in mobile and they've done it well so far.
I mean, if they're reframing that, I mean, they'd be even phenomenally more dumb than even I give them credit for.
It's been so successful, though. I'm not saying it's
like,
good,
if
but they're
Activision
making
Blizzard
money.
is looking at like other mobile game, take Jeff. If they're looking at Homa Games and going, Homa Games is our direct competitor now, right? Like,
that'd be nice.
I think A, they're late to that party. B, that's not their core competency. C, they'd be abandoning what made them great to begin with, right? Like, I just don't think that's their core competency. And there are better companies like Homa that pump out mobile games and understand that this is all data driven, right? Like, there's a way better philosophy around mobile gaming. And I guess question to you, Jeff, is when you see these numbers, right? What is the average lifespan of what I have always called glorified slot machines, right? Like, what is the average lifespan of a game like that?
I think it could be pretty long. I mean, I haven't really dove into it, so I don't know. It depends how deep the systems are and how good they are at live ops. But like, the retention on some of these like longer term. I know Diablo is not like a strategy game, but it is a bit more like mid-core, hardcore type of player. Like, you can get people sticking around for a long time. So it's definitely not like something like a Candy Crush or the games that we make, which are hyper casual, where you'll have day 7 retention below 10%. This is definitely going to have people stick around a bit longer, but it also depends on execution, like how much content they're able to continue adding with live ops and stuff like that.
But am I the only one who was disappointed by these numbers? Like, I'm curious what you guys in chat think.
You mean
50 million
would be higher, or you mean you thought you're disappointed because now it means that it was successful and they're going to put more of their stuff?
What I'm saying is 50 million a month sounds like a lot of revenue, right? But Fortnite 10 zillion years later is still probably doing 4 or 5 times that, right? Apex, we know, is doing like 4 times that. Like, yes, 50 million is a lot, but for Activision Blizzard, 600 million a year is not setting the world on fire when you're talking about IP that is this renowned, this well-known, this loved, right? And so framing it in that context, this feels like kind of a failure, right? Like, and if it doesn't sustain...
Yeah, that's the key. I think it depends what the trajectory is, right? If it's 50 million a month now, and then we're talking in a few months and it's 60, 75 million a month, and it sustains for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, then you're talking about a much different, because obviously your live ops margins are going to be way, way higher, right? The development cost to develop this versus Call of Duty or Fortnite, which you mentioned, like, are minuscule, right? Like, they could have 40, 50% margins, like, after development costs on this very easily, if not higher. So it does depend. If we start to see this go from 50 a month, 40 a month, 20 a month, 10 a month, and it kind of sustains there, then I think I would agree with you, where it's like, all right, now I start to get disappointed. But even if it maintains this pace, I mean, you're talking about 600 million of revenue at like 50% operating margins, like in perpetuity. You just created like a multi-billion-dollar business essentially. Like, I don't know. It's all about how you frame it.
But there's also, like, again, opportunity cost. What does it do to the reputation of the brand and the IP, right? Like, if you had spent all the... Is
there any way they could realistically build back their reputation, though, for you?
Good point.
I mean, I think that's like, for you specifically, I think we're a little past that.
Well, okay, let me put one more, and Jeff kind of alluded to this. If I give them any credit, okay, maybe the genius plan all along was really to use this as the feeder for Diablo 4, right? Maybe that is the brilliant evil plan. Like, let's introduce Diablo to 20 million people who didn't know Diablo even existed before, which I don't really buy that, right? Because PC gamers still have phones. You all have phones, right? But I mean, there's maybe a point to be made there if it juices the sales of Diablo 4. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me ask one question to chat and you guys.
Think it's more likely, you think it's more likely that it increases the sales than that it hurts the sales, which I think I agree. But that is the big question.
I'm not saying that's what I think. I'm saying if I have to give them some credit,
Well, now
maybe that's a potential
I guess
outcome.
I'm asking more explicit. Is that what you think?
No.
Interesting.
I think Diablo 4 will sell to the people who have always loved Diablo and are waiting for another Diablo game, regardless of what this game does, right? The IP like this just has legs and has a timelessness that there's no mobile game that can destroy it. Now, have they made a lot of gamers upset with Diablo Immortal? I think so. And I just think that a little bit of a flash in the pan, I doubt this sustains. I'm curious if you guys think revenue drops off or revenue goes up or stays flat.
Is this for chat or for us? I think
all of you.
I think it probably, best case scenarios, like kind of sustains. Like you get like 30 to 40 million a month.
Yeah, I would expect a level of drop off,
which would be like still a massive success. You're talking about a couple $100 million, added to your top line just every year, based on something that probably took them, I don't know, $50 to $75 million to build. So like the margins are really good.
Let me just read these comments. Matt says, this is a disaster. This gives companies the excuse to continue riding the slippery microtransaction slope that Paul has warned us about. Why wouldn't other mobile games also do this? I mean, plenty of mobile games, Matt, are also doing, pay to win type of mechanics. I mean, I would say 60, 70% of mobile games have pay to win mechanics as at their core. So plenty are doing it to great success, great financial success. The difference here is the core of this is IP, which I think is very valuable. That, a random indie mobile game is not starting day one with. And also why, first 2 months you had 50 million a month. Ty says, it's hard to argue against what Paul said. Immortal could be an effective technique to funnel new players into Diablo 4. At some point, revenue will plateau, but still big. Plateau, and then, I'm curious, what is the fall off, right? Is it a year? Is it 6 months before we start to see sort of the slow decline? Is it when Diablo 4 comes out? I don't know. Are people just playing this to get their Diablo fix right now? And half the player base would rather be playing on PC? It's an interesting...
Is that a bad outcome, though?
No.
Right, that's almost like your best... That's like a good thing, if that's the case.
That's where I think you could define this as a success, right?
And then the real question, I think, for whether this is like a smash hit or not is China, right? You alluded to it. This didn't include China. That 50 million a month could be. We always find ourselves shocked how big China can be. Would you be shocked if it was like 100 million a month in China alone? I feel like nothing would shock me.
I think they may put up serious download numbers in China, but where I'm always wary is the spend there. Because there's just not a ton of spend per user there. They rely on massive download volume, right? And so, JM says, I think it falls a bit, but sustains within an acceptable range. Yeah, I think you see a blip with China coming on board, and then it's sort of the slow decline over time. JM. LinkedIn user says, is it worth ruining a studio's legacy and reputation for a cash grab? That's a loaded question, but I think it's the important one. And also, again, context matters, right? The fact that Diablo mobile game is only 13th or whatever on the list of most downloaded games, that's not great, right? Again, you're talking about maybe the most top 3 AAA IP of all time, and you're 13th on the list. It doesn't scream success to me. Let's put it that way. And have you ruined the long-term reputation? I think that remains to be seen. I think players forget fast or relatively fast and will play Diablo 4 regardless. So
that is true in gaming. I feel like you always get another shot on goal. People always think these things are very deterministic, but especially with word of mouth and influencers, a studio always has another shot on goal. Now, whether there's money there for them to go build it, maybe that becomes the bigger question. You see studios get shut down because the suits or whoever's the money behind it, the capital says, hey, you're done. You get no more chances. But I think players, if you build a good game, people will, like BioWare is a great example. Like they've built now 3 or 4 like bad games in a row. Like, what was it? Anthem, Mass Effect Andromeda, a couple others. If they come out with Dragon Age, I forget whatever, Dragon Age 4, and it's good, every BioWare fan's going to come and play the game. Like no one, they may not pre-order it. They may wait to see like the reviews or whatever. But if it's good, it's going to do 12, 15, 20 million units. So I think people are too black and white with, oh, the reputation is bad, the reputation is good. These things do change a little bit over time.
Yeah. Players may lose blind faith like that. For a long time, there was just blind faith in Blizzard, right? Like anything Blizzard was going to put out, you knew was going to be a great game, and you'd pre-order and look forward to it, right? That maybe the sheen there has gone away, but will people not play Diablo 4? That I doubt. Ty says, does China have online gaming limits with mobile games like they do with other titles? Isn't it like 3 hours a day? Curious if this is affecting anything. Ty, that's an interesting point. I believe it does apply to mobile also. And that's interesting, right? Because in that context, pay to win becomes that much more important. If you're limited in time,
to be fair,
pay to get ahead.
That's true. The Diablo audience is probably older, but it is a great. It's a great point. I hadn't even kind of remembered that.